Welcome back, Fast Willie fans. I'm Will here with John. We call this the fast track because I like to fast and John likes to track everything. And John, I have something to admit. I have not been tracking anything. How do you feel about that?
Not even a little bit surprised. Can I even be let down anymore?
Like it's been a month since we've filmed one of these, and
Only? Only a month?
it's been
You've
maybe
been busy. I've
I
been
don't know,
busy. I
maybe
feel like it's
four,
been
five,
longer,
6 weeks,
but
somewhere in there. I've had some changes. I just started a new job, so I wanted to get on my feet and get everything rolling there. Everything is going well. I've still been fasting. I've been switching up the protocol a little bit. I haven't done any 3 day fasts since the 28-day challenge. I've been mostly doing 2 day fasts and 1 day fasts, or a lot of people like to call that alternate day fasting, which I like. But I haven't
so
been
you're eating
tracking.
multiple days in a row now on that new split.
I have the past couple of weeks actually what I've done is fast 2 days on Monday and Tuesday, eat on Wednesday, fast Thursday, Friday, and then eat both days on the weekend.
Okay. That's
And
different from the challenge anyway.
for sure, for sure. And my weight is up a little bit. It's back up to where it's a little bit, I think, above where I was to start the 28-day challenge. And so I have that number, I think, so this is the third day of a 3 day fast. I weighed myself this morning and I was no, I was 201.4. And my first, if you remember, it was a 4 day cycle, fast 1 day, fast 2 day, fast 3 day. And then my lowest weigh in would actually be my weight before I start eating that day. So I'm going to weigh in tomorrow and see just to see where I'm at compared to then. My first 3 day fasted weight then was 197.4. I was
But you
201.
started at 2 something, right? On day one. Just like
Yeah,
you're
and
at.
I don't have that where I was a couple of days ago, but I was 201.4 this morning. So we'll see where I am tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
It's probably going to be around there. So that's fine. I'm not like, when I was at kind of at my all through my 20s, my weight was 225 to 260. So being at 201 is very good. I'm in
Yeah.
a good mental space about that.
I mean,
Um,
that's the goal, right? Not having to worry about it, not having to track things, and
yeah.
basically just maintaining it. Like,
Yeah, you do get a little bit worrisome when your clothes start to fit a little bit tighter and things like that. So that's kind of what prompted me to want to get back into a 3 day fast here. Um, but there are some other considerations, which is kind of what I wanted to bring you on to talk about. And one of them is when I was done with the 30-day Viome challenge, I said, I'm going to be starting a new job. I will be in the spring. I'm going to be training for a marathon, which is my typical spring schedule. But in the fall, I'm going to work on adding some muscle. So that's kind of why I bring you. And I say I haven't been tracking anything, but that's not true. I've been tracking my weights and my progression in terms of my resistance training, my weight training.
mhm.
But in terms of food, I've not been tracking what I've been eating or how many calories I've been eating. Um, so let me bring you in on that, and you can just kind of say, I don't know, what do I want to say here. So I've been gaining a little bit of weight, and so what you would say is you need to be in a surplus to be putting on muscle, right? Do I have that right? Or maybe not necessarily in a surplus, but at least um, maintenance calories.
95% of the time, I would say that's true. Yeah.
In my case, I mean,
It
like the 5% of the time, I think if I know your speech correctly, is if you're like super obese. I don't know what the right
right.
term for
Or
it is.
or if you haven't, like, you've been resistance training consistently for a significant amount of time, even in the recent past, right? So
Mhm.
the other case would be like if you've never touched a weight before in your life, probably going to grow muscle regardless of what you're eating. But
Mhm.
yeah, for someone in your case now, probably not going to happen unless you're eating enough food.
Mhm.
enough calories.
And that's so if somebody who's always been trying to lose weight, it's a hard mindset for me
Oh
to
yeah.
it's a hard mindset for me. I see my scale going up and my pants starting to get a little bit tighter. And I want to know, like, from your perspective, how much weight am I allowed to put on? Like, what would you tell your clients? Like, oh, it's okay if you're putting on this amount of weight because we can just burn that fat off later. Or, like, do you have any suggestions for me in terms of you're gaining weight too fast, or just stick with it? You need to do this for this amount of time.
Yeah,
Because
I would.
you're obviously not going to tell me to fast for 2 days in a row and then eat in the surplus that I
Right.
eat in.
Yeah,
But
my approach would definitely be, first of all, you got to be okay with the weight going up, but also you physically being a larger person, right? That's part of the process, and a lot of that initially, especially in your case, when you're going to be eating more frequently now, less fasting days, you're going to be ingesting more nutrients in general, but more carbs and more training is going to lead to like higher glycogen storage too. So that takes up size. With um, glycogen in the muscle cells comes water, which I mean makes you physically bigger, right? So even if you didn't gain any fat, your pants could be tighter because you have just more glycogen from more carbs, right? So the first step is just realizing that the scale is probably going to go up, the clothes are probably going to get tighter, but that's kind of the goal, is to get bigger, right? So it is backwards. It is hard for a lot of people who are always thinking smaller equals better or smaller equals less fat, but that's not always the case when you look at other factors too. So I would also say it's probably beneficial to look at body composition via circumference measurements, pictures, as well as the scale. And then when you're doing all three of those, you can set a realistic rate of gain, similar to how you would do in the reverse, like the deficit where you're trying to lose weight. And with that, I always say somewhere between like 0.5 to 1% of your body weight per week. So like if you're in the opposite stage and you're gaining, you probably don't want to do that quite as fast, because more often than not, if you are gaining that quickly, you are putting on more muscle or more fat than is necessary. So I would say maybe that's rate per month. So for most people, just on average, and like let's say you 200 pounds, that's 2 pounds over a month is a decent goal to shoot for. But with that too, you're going to definitely want to be looking at averages, because in a caloric surplus or even at maintenance, those spikes could be so high up and down, especially with yours. On some days not eating, some days you are. It's hard to really know, like, okay, man, it looks like my weight's up 10 pounds, but is it really?
yeah, and especially with we saw that during the 28-day challenge, like
Right.
the
10
drastic
pounds, I think,
spike.
right?
It's more about tracking the trend on that rather than.
Right. So that trend should be at that pace. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
your weekly average weight should be something like half a pound per week up. If you are doing things in a super controlled manner, right? If you're not tracking your food, then it's kind of hard to know for sure, but then you just have to adjust your habits, maybe adjust your fasting schedule so that that trend is more in line with a realistic expectation for gaining.
Okay. So I finished the 28-day challenge in I think it was like late August, and then I did maybe it was like mid-August, and then I did the 30-day challenge, the Viome challenge. So during both of those, I was losing weight, and so I want to put on muscle. How long of a time span do you think that I should be eating at maintenance or in a surplus to be putting on muscle? I mean, is that something I could do for 2 years if I wanted to, or is there a certain amount of time that you would say this amount of time works, and then you want to go into cutting a little bit?
So the general rule of thumb, I would say, is the amount of time that you spent in a deficit, probably before you consider going into another one. And let's say it's an extended one, like more than a couple of weeks. Let's say you were in a cut for 3 months. You probably want to be either at maintenance or above for 6 before you go into another extended cut. That's, again, if it's just like a week or so, maybe even a month, probably doesn't need to be quite as long. But the other general rule of thumb is, for the most part, you want to be not dieting more than you are, right? So maintenance really is just kind of like what you've been doing the past month-ish, right? Like your weight's about the same. You haven't been really tracking anything, but you've roughly been at maintenance, right? And that's kind of what the end goal always is. So much longer than you are actually dieting or in a deficit, for sure.
Mhm. That's interesting. So would you would say is then like don't worry about cutting until like I want to I want to run my race, which will be in May, at my lightest weight possible. And so maybe not go back into cutting until even like February at this point. Try to make it all the way through to then without worrying about what my bottom weight is. Just eat at maintenance, get your workout in, make sure you're feeding yourself enough, make sure you're doing enough resistance training.
Yeah, and I would say, I mean, you know better than I do. You're doing a half marathon or
Uh,
the full?
I'm not sure. I'll probably end up doing a full this year. It depends on how my life is going,
So
how much time.
when do you plan on starting like the training for that?
January.
Okay, then yeah, I would say that probably makes sense to not be dieting, and at least until then, maybe even afterwards, because for the most part, you want to make sure you're fueling that adaptation too, right? Like running and endurance training uses a lot of energy and a lot of carbohydrates, right? So you don't want to cut those out immediately, but
Mhm.
when you're aiming to lose fat, you can either control food, control expenditure, a little bit of both, and from
Mhm.
January to May, your expenditure is going to be going up, 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 and up with your increased runs. So
Yeah.
you kind of got to pair it strategically, but yeah, you don't want to be coming into that starting phase of your training super, super low on calories already, because then you basically have nowhere to go on this side of the equation.
Mhm. So what you're saying is because of the hard work that I've done since January this year, fasting to get to the weight I'm at, this could be the first time ever that I'm allowed to just completely enjoy eating season. I get all of Halloween, I get Thanksgiving, I get Christmas, I get New Year's, and all the leftovers and all the candy and all the pie and everything. Just go ahead and enjoy it.
Hey,
Maybe
you're the
not, maybe not too much in excess, but go ahead.
right,
Don't think
right.
about it for the first time ever.
I think that's going to be beneficial both from a physical standpoint and also like a psychological standpoint too, right? Like you said, you fall into that category of always been trying to lose weight, basically, right? So up until this point, right now, you're 30, right? 30 years. Well, okay, not since you were literally born, but still, how many of that years were you like worrying about your weight, trying to lose it, and dieting, right? So most of your life, like I said, should be not. So that's going to be a good phase to get through of allowing yourself to just not worry about it, right?
Mhm. It's definitely tough. Like I know that I'm progressing through my weights, and I'm trying to go as slow as possible. I don't have any spotters or anything. Just working out in my home gym, and so I've really taken the slow road to getting to the point that I'm at on the weights that I'm currently lifting.
Hey, I like that strategy more than people just like loading weights on just for the sake of doing it. Because if you're not actually in control of the weight that you're moving, are you actually increasing like the stimulus from that work anyway, or are you just using momentum or shortening the range of motion or just moving that weight to move it?
Right.
So
What do you say? Regulate your movements.
right, like standardize your reps, right? So that means
Standardized.
when you actually add weight to it, you're going through the same range of motion, you're using the same tempo. That way, again, you're not cheating yourself or making it easier just so you can move more weight physically.
Yeah. So, like, I'm not gonna lie, it's definitely hard on me mentally to look at the weight or look at the scale and see it going back up. It's just like not something I've ever been comfortable with. Like, and I'm trying to get to a point, and who knows, maybe somebody who's always been in this mindset is never going to get there, and it's something that I need to just monitor for myself and not let it be such such a mood changer in a negative way for myself. And maybe in the end, that could end up being like a positive thing for me. I notice that I'm not letting this negatively affect me, so therefore it's positive. Like I'm seeing this as a win, just because
Yeah.
it's not a loss, right? Um, but I don't know. It's hard. It's hard not to.
Yeah.
Like you see it more than I do. Like you help people through this, but like for me personally, like it was hard to get onto the scale this morning. I hadn't weighed myself in a few weeks. It was hard to get on the scale this morning and see 201.4 when in I don't know when was it. I have it pulled up here.
A month ago, like a
Like
month and a half.
well, like late June, I had 183,
Oh,
right?
right.
So it's just like it's tough to see that, but at the same time,
Yeah.
I mean that's way better than the 225. So it's
Right.
like
You
you
haven't
have to
gone all
keep
the
an
way
eye on
back
yourself.
up. And if you look back over the last month to 6 weeks where you were doing that challenge before, like I said, you've been basically kind of just intuitively eating. I mean, you're still doing your fasting schedule, but you haven't been tracking anything like you were before.
Mhm.
And your weight's basically the exact same, right? So you haven't really gained over the last 6 weeks.
Mhm.
So that's a win in and of itself. But I do agree, you're not at all alone in that mental struggle to overcome the negative responses to seeing yourself become a bigger person, right? Seeing the scale move, seeing the clothes fit tighter. But once you realize that it's not always a bad thing for that to happen, then it starts to become more normalized.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I definitely appreciate that. It's going to be a hard thing for us to like come to terms on in terms of like my approach, which is the fasting, yours, which is the like training, like the reverse dieting and things like that. So for me to even talk about it, like there are still going to be days where I'm not eating anything, and right, you would say, well, like you need to be above maintenance, and I wonder, like how my body is responding. Say like over a 3 day span, if I'm fasting for 2 days and then eating, let's say my maintenance is supposed to be 3,000 calories right now. Say I'm eating 9,000 calories on that third day. Is my body responding in a way that's like staying at maintenance, or is it like going into a place that's like, oh, we're in a 2 day deficit, so we're trying to lose weight, and then like, wait, now we're getting all this food, like this is messing us up, or is like the aggregate over the 3 day period, or the 6 day period, or the 9 day period? Does my body understand what's going on with it?
Right. Yeah. I wish the body was like a computer or like a calculator where it literally was just like numbers in equals numbers out, right? But yeah, you intaking zero over a few days is probably going to be equal a different expenditure or out over those 3 days than you eating 3,000 in, you know what I mean? And whether that's more or less, I don't really know. Like, I don't really have that much experience in that to know for sure. But yeah, it's never as black and white. It's just, well, the calories were exactly the same. So weight loss should be exactly the same. I mean, theoretically, yes, but on a day to day basis, there's no way. You know what I mean? Something's going to change.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. It's something I felt good. Like the biggest thing about it, so like mentally this morning, that didn't feel good to me, but I'm glad that I was able to recognize like what was going on there. But generally, like I felt pretty good in terms of like mentally, like sharpness, like able to work out. Like I feel good, no digestive issues. And so as long as I'm maintaining and feeling good, like I think this is a lifestyle choice that's working for me currently,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
which is
And I
what it's
agree.
all
That's
about.
then that's the end goal anyway, right? I
Yeah.
think your strategy looks different than a lot of other people's, but if it gets you to the same place in the end, who's to say that you shouldn't be doing that, right? And
Right.
maybe other people can find the same success in that. But really, you've gotten to again, over the last 6 weeks, like I said, you're maintaining without having to really struggle, and you overall feel good. That's what else can you ask for, right?
Right. Right. So, well, we can continue this discussion in the future. We'll come up with some more topics. I wanted to jump back in today, reintroduce ourselves, kind of get back in the flow of things. I don't have a schedule for videos or what I'm going to do next right now. We're jumping in, getting back to it. John, can you tell everybody who's still listening where to find you on Instagram or wherever else you want people to find you?
Yeah, that's pretty much my main page, and it's just at underscore John dot Noel, Noel, and that's where I mean it's a personal account, but also where I run and post a lot of the stuff from my clients that I work with at Level 10, which is what I do full time from home.
Okay. Thank you. And you guys know where to find me, Fast Willie. So, John, I appreciate your time, and
For
we'll catch
sure.
up again hopefully next week.
Yep.
All right. See you.